Well, it's Sunday. Sunday means that the PJ Campbell show is back. Sunday means that I hope you guys are doing well. I think it's actually Easter Sunday. Is it Easter Sunday? I think it is. I don't know. Everything's crazy. It's quarantine right now. I've lost track of time. How are you guys doing? I am your host, PJ Campbell. It is so good to have you guys here with us today. We are going to be talking about the top 10 albums of the decade for each of us, because there's a whole lot of music that came out over the last decade, and this was actually not my idea. I'm going to actually leave all the explanation to the mastermind behind all of this. You guys know him from quite a few of the other shows on the PJ Campbell Network. Evan DeGraff, you are here in-house. How are you doing, sir?
I am okay. It's Easter Sunday. I woke up not realizing it was Easter Sunday.
Same.
But when you and I were talking about different things to do for the PJ Campbell show, I was like, let's do an episode about music, because why not? There's a lot of music that's come out in the decade, and I haven't had the chance to talk about it. And so here we are. We're going to talk about some tracks, and here's how we're going to run things down before we introduce our very special guest. We're going to be discussing all of our honorable mentions, which we have a lot of them for obvious reasons. And then we're going to discuss our 10 through 7, our 6 through 4, our 3 through 2, and then what our number one record of the decade is. But with that, PJ, we have something way more important.
Dude, this is so freaking awesome. I have had the pleasure of getting to know this individual over the last 3 years now. I can't believe it's been that long. I met him at Schmoes Know, because I used to hang out towards the back end of Schmoes Know's days. I was actually hanging out at the studio, and RB3 and I kicked it off, and that is been one of my great stories and great friendships that I've gotten out of being a part of this whole thing, has been getting to know the man we call Robert Butler III. Here he is, everyone. He's here in-house. How are you, sir?
Hey, what's going on, PJ? I'm glad to be on the PJ Campbell Network today with two of my favorite people in the entire world. Super looking forward to this, and I love talking music. We don't get to talk music a lot in this space, so
no, we don't, man. Yeah. And that's why we wanted to do it, because most of the time, I mean, as we all know, we all kind of met through Schmoes, and Schmoes is predominantly movie related, which there's nothing wrong with that, because we all like movies here. You're a filmmaker, Evan and I both want to be producers. That's the kind of stuff that we like. But at the same time, who doesn't love music? Music is the thing that, at least for me, has been a driving part of my soul for so long. And I'm so happy that we get to sit down and talk about different albums and stuff, because music is so much like movies that it can affect everyone in different ways, but we also all come from things from very different places.
Absolutely. And I think, the way that music is probably one of the most impactful art forms, music and movies. But I think music more so because it's a little bit more of a personal experience. So it's definitely based a lot and derived a lot on how we interpret life, how we interpret our experiences, how we interpret sonic sounds and rhythms and everything that just plays into it. So I love what music represents.
No, for sure. And it's funny, being PJ, we're talking about this. All three of our lists are going to be super different. Because music, I believe music's way more subjective than something like movies is. Yeah, again, movies are subjective, but when music hits a chord with you, it really hits and it just kind of sticks with you forever. And I know over time, especially in my high school days, I really discovered hip hop, which may or may not be predominant on my list, but you discover things at different times and it affects you during different ways. So I'm really excited. And I think a lot of what we're going to see, at least on my list, is kind of part of my growth for these past 10 years and kind of the music listener I am today. So I'm super excited for that. I also want to shout Dorian Parks.
Yeah, I was about to say, look, we got Dorian Parks in the chat. Dorian, I hope you are doing well right now during the quarantine. Danny Coast, of the Action Army, Mike Messina, who was one of my old podcasting partners back in the day. We got all sorts of people in the chat right now, man.
Hey, yeah, we love to see it.
We love to see it. I mean, I hope Dorian sends us a list of some of his favorite albums. I'd love to hear some of his things, because he's a very interesting dude. I miss Dorian, man. Have you seen Dorian in a little bit?
I haven't seen Dorian. We've been talking. We've been texting back and forth for a little bit. He popped up on our first live stream that we did a few days ago. So I love seeing Dorian come in.
Oh, yeah. True. Let's go.
I love it. I love to see it. But, man, we have a lot of stuff to talk about. But I just want to get for you right now, before we jump into this, like, how's the quarantine been treating you? Like, what are you doing right now to kind of get through all this?
I've been working a lot on building up First Cut, building up our YouTube channel. We like I said, we just did our first live stream. We're doing a lot of reviews, watching a lot of content. We're gonna, within the next few weeks, we're gonna be rolling out some new content with some new shows, with a couple of new personalities that is gonna be really, really fun. And obviously, like, it's easy to be down with because of the quarantine, but I've been trying to use it to also do a lot of creative endeavors personally. So I've been for me right now, I've just been finishing up Timestamp, which is a short film that we raised a bunch of money for. I'm also working on writing my own scripts, a couple of features, hopefully sometime down the line. So yeah, all across the board.
That's awesome, man. I also made sure the First Cut link is also in the chat right now. I'll also put it in the description later tonight when everything is said and done. So if you guys are listening and watching and you haven't subscribed to First Cut yet, you've got to support RB3 and all of our friends over there, because it is vitally important.
Thank you. I appreciate it greatly.
Dude, that's what we're here for, man. That's what we're here for.
Do we want to jump into some honorable mentions?
Yeah, and we're going to let our guests go first, because that's how we work around here, man. We always let the guests go first. So let's start with some honorable mentions. RB3, what do you got as your honorable mentions right now for the decade in music?
Okay, so honorable mention. So you're going to see a lot of previews of like my taste kind of shine through my honorable mentions. There's a few genres that I kind of like really latch onto, so you'll kind of see that in my honorable mentions. One of them I have is House of Balloons by The Weeknd. That was so close to making the list. I kind of made the personal effort of like trying to avoid mixtapes particularly, and I guess this one technically counts as a mixtape, but I don't really care. I love it so much, and it's one of the formative R&B albums of recent times. On top of that, I also have In Colors by Jamie XX. A little more of a pop vibe. That's also another honorable mention. If You're Reading This, It's Too Late by Drake.
Ooh, that's a tough one to leave out.
Yeah, super tough to leave out. Again, that's another one I was like, is it a mixtape? Is it an album? I'll put in honorable mentions. Planetarium by Sufjan Stevens and Bryce Dallas and a few other people that were involved in that one. Very alternative, very sci-fi-ish kind of record that I really enjoyed too. Astroworld, Travis Scott on the hip hop side, which I got to represent in honorable mentions. Yeah, see, Evan's not a fan.
Dude, like, here's the thing with Astroworld, it's super inconsistent for me. Like, it goes in and out. Like, you have the song of the year, which I'm now being dumb.
Sicko mode.
Yeah, you have Sicko mode, which you could argue is the song of the year, and then you just have some really low tracks in there, which snoozes me. But like, I know a lot of people that enjoy the album, so I can't hate.
Yeah, nah, it was like an entire summer I spent like listening to that album, so I really appreciate that one. And last but not least on my honorable mentions list, and this is going to be a huge surprise, I think, for being left off of the main list, is actually To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. That's my number one honorable mention. Unfortunately, it fortunately was not able to make the cut.
So, can I ask you, is it a thing of accessibility?
No, not necessarily. I also didn't want to put multiple albums from the same artist.
That's fair.
And I have another Kendrick Lamar album that could potentially be represented in the list, and and the other album I think I like just a little bit more from a personal standpoint than this one. So if it was the best albums of the decade, I might put this album there. But since we're talking about personal favorites, I didn't want to go too Kendrick crazy on this list.
That's fair. I can understand that. I think I'm gonna roll in.
Man. Go for it.
I did way more than 5, which is an issue. Sorry for that, but
I've got 10, so we're good.
We're gonna go. So we're gonna start off with one artist. Probably my only country shout that I have on here. 3 records, all by Eric Church: Chief, Mr. Misunderstood, and The Outsiders. they're all fantastic. Like if you're trying to get like dip your toe into country music, because I know I don't like all of country music. I think it's hip hoppy snap bass thing has kind of like went away from the storytelling, but he does a really good job of just like making his music accessible to everyone, but also telling a really cool story within that. And I enjoy how he's progressed throughout his career. So I'd recommend giving those 3 records a shot. A really fun listen. I also have 2014 Forest Hills Drive's J. Cole's album. It doesn't need any explaining. It has some of the best songs probably of the decade on there. I think Wet Dreams is forever going to be a classic for obvious reasons. And then I also have 3 Kanye records on here. 2 of them collaborations. One of them one of my favorite records. We have Watch the Throne, the Kanye West Jay-Z record. Some of the production on that you could argue is like all time amazing. I have Kids See Ghosts on there. It strikes a chord with me, a really emotional one for I don't know what reason, but every time I listen to it, you feel something. And then I have The Life of Pablo. No More Parties in LA, I actually think might be my favorite song of the decade. Kendrick's verse, and then you on top of that, Kanye somehow out-raps Kendrick Lamar on that very small, very gritty beat. It's so good. Next one, I have Control, Citizens of Control. It hit me at the right time, right place. I was really like diving deep into R&B and hip hop at the time, and then Control came out, and it just blew me away. And then we're also the other Kendrick, one of the Kendrick albums that is not on my list, the Black Panther album actually. It has some things that slap on it. King's Dead, probably one of the songs of the year, just kept rolling. I love All the Stars personally, and then just a few other songs in there that I love. And then 2 soundtracks that are not just meant for music. So we have the Dear Evan Hansen album. I saw that show on Broadway, but the music keeps hitting me. And then we also have a Star Is Born soundtrack, the the Lady Gaga Bradley Cooper written soundtrack, which the Shallows is an all-time great song to me. So those are my honorable mentions. Definitely love all that music. It literally just barely missed out.
I mean, look, that's the thing about all these lists, right? Is everything that we have is going to be stuff that's hit us very specifically at certain times or whatever else. So no one's right or wrong in what they have. And mine, my honorable mentions kind of inform a lot of what I think you guys are going to see on my list, because I like hip hop and I like R&B a lot, but I also I'm probably the one who leans heaviest on like alt and rock and like heavy metal. So we're going to see a little bit of that, starting with One More Light, which ended up being Linkin Park's last album. And I'm a huge Linkin Park fan. I have been ever since they showed up on the scene. And I mean, Chester Bennington was like one of the all-time great vocalists. And with that alone, I had to give that a shout out, as well as One More Light Live, because that was their last album altogether, where they actually took a compilation essentially of a bunch of the different live shows they did, of a bunch of the different songs, and they put together essentially what would be like their last live album together. And there's hits from across the board, from from One More Light all the way back to Meteora and Hybrid Theory. So there's something. I love Linkin Park. It means the world. They mean the world to me, and I had to shout them out. Black America Again by Common is one of the great hip hop albums of the decade. I'm a big Common fan. I think that album just works on just about every level. It just is so good. Wish I Was Here, the soundtrack for the Zach Braff's film. I'm a big fan of Zach Braff, and I think that his movies always have incredibly interesting and dynamic soundtracks. And that's always part of the reason I've liked Scrubs, because he was a big influence on the music on that show as well. So there's just something to be said about the stuff he chooses from there. Weather by Huey Lewis and the News, which ended up being Huey Lewis's last album. I'm a big fan of the News. Obviously, anyone who knows, Back to the Future is my favorite film, and that informed a lot of what I listened to and watched growing up. Music to Be Murdered By Eminem. It was obviously his newest album. It's a little too new for me to just like throw it up in the top of the decade, but I love Eminem. I have. Evan, I'm sorry, you don't have to like it, but I can't.
M's I think M's gonna come up again at some point. I just have a feeling. Here, I'm gonna get this out of the way so I don't shit on it later. M has fallen so hard. Some of the music's been okay and has been listenable, but man, just like I don't want the old M back, but he can be retrospective without making bad music. That's all I have to say.
I mean, look, man. You do you. I'm not going to judge you on your thoughts and feelings. Just don't judge me on mine. Ordinary Man by Ozzy Osbourne ended up being his last album as well. There's some really great songs on there. The title song alone with him and Elton John, which is Ordinary Man, is spectacular. Hallucinations by Purvis. I really like Purvis. That's more of an EP than it is a full album. I love it a lot. And then shout out to two of my favorite musicals of the decade, which were A Bronx Tale and Moulin Rouge. Both of them have really great music. I think that both of them tell really beautiful stories. I enjoy listening to those frequently, and they move me to tears sometimes. So those get my honorable mention list.
Can I do one more honorable mention? I'm so sorry. Of course.
No, dude, of course.
I totally forgot, now that you mentioned, you mentioned a few in there that I really love. Evan mentioned Life of Pablo, and I also want to shout out Radiohead, a Moon-Shaped Pool. That one is absolutely amazing. That one was like literally like the last one that it was like the 11th spot, and I totally forgot to write it in the honorable mention section, but that one was right there. So I gotta shout that one out.
I love it, man. I love it.
And Radiohead's one of those bands where for some reason I can't get into them, but I recognize their impacts that they have had, like within rock, and even their impact on older rock bands. Like my favorite rock band right now, the Foo Fighters, their music has still somehow impacted a band that started in the 90s. So like I get Radiohead and I get like their place in music.
Shout out to Mike Messina. Very different music selections going on in here. Pretty interesting. I think it's going to get more interesting as we go on, man, because
it really is.
we all have very different music tastes, and that's not a bad thing. I think that's why I'm so excited, because I think we're about to show people probably close to 30 albums on top of our honorable mentions that are going, I'm hoping you guys will start listening to. Like, even if you maybe don't listen to this type of music because we're all talking about it, I'm hoping we shed a light on stuff that you guys didn't know about or you've looked at and thought about listening to. Now's a great time.
That's true.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's quarantine, right? Like, we have a lot of time, and I'm wanting to, like, that's part of the reason we've been doing the watch-alongs on this channel. If you guys notice, we're not doing, like, huge movies for the watch-alongs. It would be very easy to try to do that. But I want to shine the light on a lot of cult classics and, like, animated films that I think might get looked over, because I want to spread the love onto stuff that people aren't be paying attention to, which is actually something I want to talk about with RB3 later, because I would love to get you on one of the watch-alongs with one of your like favorite cult classics, but we'll talk about that later off.
Oh, absolutely. I love that.
We have a Mark Ellis sighting in the chat. He said, how many Van Halen albums has Robert mentioned so far? Shout out to our buddy Mark Ellis, who we might be having on.
Hey,
I don't want to say more, but we got an announcement later at the end of the show.
I do have to say, the best Van Halen involves thing that happened in this decade was whenever the Foo Fighters decided to mix Imagine and Jump at a bunch of their shows come 2017. So, you know what? Van Halen did some things in this decade, just not in ways you would expect.
All right, so we are going to go ahead and start jumping into our decade list. We're going to start with our boy RB3 here. Why don't you go ahead and give us your bottom three of the decade?
Bottom three of the decade. All right, so we are starting with number 10. This one, number 10 is actually kind of an internal compromise in my head, but I still think it's definitely worthy of a top 10 spot, and that's Drake, Take Care. I want to shout out Drake because, like I said in my honorable mentions, If You're Reading This Is Too Late, is actually my favorite Drake project ever. And then House of Balloons is my favorite Weeknd project ever. But because there's not room for like two of them, and this is kind of like the best of both worlds, right? Because I kind of consider Take Care like the Weeknd and Drake collaborative album, like unofficially.
Yeah.
So that's definitely I have to shout that out as my number 10 spot for two of my favorite artists.
I love that.
Yeah, definitely. Number 9, Some Nights by Fun. I remember when this album came out in like 2012. This is one of those pop records that is like legitimately like really, really well done. Like actually probably one of the best intro tracks of all time, leading into the big, one of the biggest singles, one of the biggest pop singles. I remember back when I was in high school. So all around, just literally a fun, just, for lack of a better term, it's fun. So I legitimately love Some Nights.
Also like when Fun came around and they did their shit, like it really rocked the pop sphere and even the music world for a while. Like Tonight was on was on radio for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, literally. And I really don't even know what like happened to him like after this album. Like, I don't know if they like had anything else that they, or they just broke up.
Well, Nate, the lead singer had that one song with Pink.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I post that. I mean, I don't, I don't know, but it's that I remember distinctly listening to that album in high school and just having like the most amazing time, and then still continuing it to this day. Like I still find songs on there that I still want to listen to and put into one of my movies one of these days. So that's I had to shout that one out. My number 8 spot is more of a, I don't want to say a deep cut because it's not really that deep cutty, but it's one I think that's gotten way overlooked, and that's Blank Face by Schoolboy Q. That one is super, super. It's like a mixture of gangster music meets weird, surrealist, like trippy, like quasi-experimental instrumentals and production. So it's like it's a lot of what I love. It's a lot of like experimentation, but it's a lot of like real gangster hip hop too. So it's so crazy and so fun. I love it so much. So that's my number 8 pick. And finally, my number 7 pick. I got to go with Anti from Rihanna. That's probably my favorite Rihanna album of all time. It's the perfect mixture of like pop and R&B, but mostly pop, but then also a lot of like just clean, like cleanly mixed, like cleanly refined, like almost like kind of overly polished, but like in a perfect way, production and beats mixed with like Rihanna's beautiful singing, and just all around, it's just one of my favorites.
That's so cool, man.
I think my favorite pick that you had was the Schoolboy Q one, because I forgot about it, but like there's songs that pop up on it all the time on my mixes. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, Schoolboy Q made that banger, got it.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that for my list. Shit, that's a good pick. But yeah, definitely the Schoolboy Q one's one that pops out the most for me. PJ?
I really love Fun. Like I was surprised to hear that. I hadn't even thought about it because again, it goes back quite a bit, and like what a great album. And I listened to that album back when it came out. So I was actually happy to hear that because I hadn't even thought about it. And yeah, what the hell happened to them? It's just so funny. Like I hadn't really thought about it. They even disappeared a little.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's insane.
All right, Evan, you go. What are your 10 through 7?
So I definitely broke some rules, but that's okay. So at number 10, I have Acid Rap and Coloring Book. I think they work kind of get together because we see Chance trying to survive on his tear on the indie scene, saying, I don't need those labels. Fuck that. Screw all y'all who are trying to suppress me. And then we go on to Coloring Book, which is produced like an actual album. It sounds like it should be a full feature length record. And to me, I'm not like, full disclosure, I'm not like Christian, but damn, the gospel on this just sounds amazing. And the way how he's able to, and it's also has some Kanye influence there too, clearly. And the way how he's just able to express his happiness with what he's there for outside of Summer Friends, which that track in its own is insane. Just really is a big cohesive thing that he really did. We're not going to talk about his newest record. I never want to talk about that ever again. But Acid Rap and Coloring Book, to me, at least in my like journey through hip hop, was monumental because it really painted a really cool picture of an artist's journey and what they're going through.
Absolutely.
Now, number 9, I have La La Land. The La La Land soundtrack did everything for me. It's hard to put into words. I wanted to put the Whiplash soundtrack actually in my honorable mentions, but it's just missed out just due to the fact like there's no words behind it, and I like my music to actually speak to me, if that makes any sense. But the La La Land soundtrack, man, oh my god! From the opening number to Another Day of Sun, which kind of just shows the daily hustle and the daily grind of LA, and how it will bring you up and down at all points of time. To Someone in the Crowd, which you could argue is one of the best songs of the decade. yes, that's a hot take, but I've talked to a lot of people who listen to jazz and listen to just music, musical theater-esque music, and they all agree Someone in the Crowd is probably one of the best songs in a while.
So
I love
Evan,
the
you are pro white people saving jazz. Is that what we're hearing here?
You like jazz?
You like jazz?
You like jazz? And then after that, we have Bring Me the Horizons Ammo. I really got to shout out Jay Williams and Ryan Snelling for helping me find this record. When they talked about it in their podcast and I'm in a group chat with them, they really pushed me to listen to this. I'm not a big metal guy, not into that scene, but man, Bring Me the Horizons Ammo, man, does so many things for me. It spans, it stretches its genres as much as it can, and it's in your face. It screams to you, but it's comfortable in the ears. You're not like, oh, this hurts, or you're like, oh, they're doing something cool here. Especially when they open up the record with Mantra, and when you hear songs like Why You Gotta Kick Me Like I'm Down, and just things like that. It really just progresses his narrative and their narrative and how they've grown as a band. And then for my number 7, Finding Dory, and just put this there as well. We have My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
Ooh.
It is, if you haven't listened to this record or understand what it meant for his career, and literally everyone that is on this record, Elton John is on this album. Elton fucking John. It is pinnacle hip hop. It is pinnacle grand music. I put this out on a tweet, I think like 2 weeks ago. All the Light should be talked about in the idea of best song of all time. Because if we're gonna talk songs like Stairway to Heaven, a couple Beatles songs, I would say Red Hot Chili Peppers song, Under the Bridge, like those songs where they're big and grand. You have to put All of the Lights in there. It has 67 artists in there, literally just screaming, all of the lights in here, baby. Let me close. I want to hear this. And then on top of that, it deconstructs Kanye and the place that he was in at that time, because that was post Taylor Swift incident. That was post him, going insane. He ran away from everybody and he decided to make one of the best records of all time. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. That is my number 7.
All right, I'll give you My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy for sure when it comes to Kanye, because I'm actually not the biggest Kanye fan, and it's not like a dig or anything. It's just his music doesn't speak to me in the same way that it speaks to some other people, but I actually really do like that album a lot. So I will give you that. That is a very good choice for the decade.
Yeah, I'll probably speak on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy a little later. But I do want to shout out La La Land soundtrack. I really heavily considered it. The only thing that held me back is that they have that one terrible John Legend song on there.
It's so funny though, because I can jam out to it. Even if I hate it, I can jam to it, and that's why I don't hate it.
Yeah. I feel in the context of the movie is great, but in the context of I guess like an album, it's like, ooh, it's always a skippable one for me. But I definitely love. I'm a La La Lander for life, for sure.
Exactly, La La Land for life. Shout out Scott Mantz wherever he is during these quarantine times.
I think we can all agree that La La Land is just like a really, really great movie with a beautiful soundtrack. Like I know that it's very popular on the internet to hate it, and like. That's fine. I understand if people don't like it, but I actually really, really love that movie, and I love the music from it. I mean, the opening alone seals how much I love that movie.
Yeah. No, it's that opening scene on like the intersection between the 105 and 110 freeway is where we see the downtown skyline behind it. Amazing.
Also, RE3, I got to put you on the spot. The Chance records, I know they're not going to be on here. I just want to hear why, because we've never actually had this conversation. I know how you feel, but we haven't actually had this conversation.
We used to argue all the time before we met in like real life about Chance the Rapper, and that's so funny that you put. So my thing is, I would definitely put Acid Rap like as a top. For sure. Coloring Book is a little lower for me, only because like I mean. I don't know how to say it without like lack of better words, but like, I don't know. To me, almost at that point, I almost felt like he was starting to sell out, a little bit. That's just me personally. That's just the way my ears were like hearing
Fair enough.
that particular, but there was, I mean, don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of great songs on Coloring Book, like No Trouble, or No Problems, and there's a lot of great records on there. I mean, 100%, and like it's sonically is definitely beautiful, and it's actually one of the better hip hop albums in general. And the thing I love about Life of Pablo is that you can see Chance the Rapper's influence all over it. So So I definitely vibe with Coloring Book. I don't hate it, and I actually kind of like it a lot. But
it does sometimes sound overproduced. I can give you that. Where like it's like, oh, here is this thing, this record that we're pushing so much, we have to put literally everything into it, but they almost put in too much. I can see what you're saying by that.
Yeah, but no, I love acid rap and I love surf. Surf was actually really close to making this list too with Chance Rapper's band. Yeah, but I love it.
Awesome. And then a couple of things. Jillian and Sean are in the chat.
Hey.
Saying hi. What's up, guys? And then Rock Movies with Tyler says, sorry, Evan, but Ammo is not the best record of 2019. You're maybe not wrong, but also what it meant to me in my like music journey to listening to more metal records, they were really important to me. And I think it's really soft on the ears, which is important when it comes to people finding metal. And then Dorian also makes a really good point where he says the more Chance's voice hurts, the older I get, the more Chance's voice hurts my ears. I call it the Macklemore effect. I like some of his music though. I can't hate that because like every time you hear or something like that, like it's so corny, it's so cheesy, and the na 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 na, like I get it.
Yeah, no, yeah, I don't hate Chance. That last the Big Day, that's definitely one of the worst albums. Yeah,
it's so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah.
All right, PJ.
All right, so we got a little bit to get into with mine because again, a lot of stuff that you guys are not going to have, and I know that. I'm already well aware of where this is kind of going, and I'm okay with that. My number 10 is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the soundtrack. It's the one that we were talking about off camera right before we came on. This was like my one mixtape, if you will, that I had to have because I think that this is arguably one of the great soundtracks of the decade. I think that it really encapsulated the entire feel, and like every single character beat that Miles feels throughout the film is captured on this album. Like it is just so good. Everything about it is just entirely listenable all the time, and I love it for that. So it's just something that I can revisit over and over and over again. So for me, Into the Spider-Verse definitely is one of the greats of the decade for me.
Yeah, I do have to say, I think the one reason why it's nowhere near my list is I personally repent Post Malone, and I don't know why. I hear his crusty ass voice, and I just can't do it. And if that's the reason why I repent a whole album, I am so sorry to everyone. But yeah, I get it.
Is insanity. Like that is insanity, bro. I get not enjoying Post Malone, but to write off the entire soundtrack is
I know it's bad. Trust me, I know.
Bizarre.
What's your 9, PJ?
All right, my number 9 is going to be Fine Line by Harry Styles. That was his newest album that came out last year. Harry Styles is someone that I didn't think I was ever really going to get into. I was never like a One Direction person, so I kind of wrote him off as just another wannabe pop star, and yet Ryan Snelling pushed me to really like sit down and listen to his album, and then Fine Line came out, and I was just totally blown away. And it came out while I was in New York, and I have just like this very lightning in a bottle moment of walking around the city, listening to it, like letting it just wash over me, and it's just so beautiful. And I think it also helps that I think that music video that he did is incredible. I think that he did one of like the all-time great music videos out of it. So that goes a long way too, because I think that we undersell how important music videos still can be. Mm-hmm. My number 8 is White Noise by Purvis. I, again, really, really like Purvis, and White Noise is an album that has just really, really stayed with me. Ever since I discovered it, I like it a ton. There's some songs on it that just hit me in the right way, and it just feels like, especially with some of the stuff I had gone through over the last year, like there was some stuff that really felt like it understood me while I listened to it, like songs that just bleed the way your emotions feel. And so it's a big thing for me. And my number 7, and there's no way that anyone has this, is I'm With You by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. This was one of their albums that they did, I think it's like 2010, so I think it's just right around the decade. I'm a big Chili Peppers guy, and it came out at the right time that I just needed this kind of music again. I just really like the Chili Peppers, and there's just something about this album that I could put it on and just listen to it all the way through. It's not nearly their best, but in a decade where I had transitioned a lot in life, that the Chili Peppers sound was like a very big constant, and so this album just kind of spoke to me in that way.
Yeah, I get that. Also, a couple of things. JTE in the house. What's up,
JTE?
He was wondering how many Andrew WK albums have made it so far on the list.
JTE was good, boy.
And yeah, I get the Red Hot Chili Peppers pick, but I don't. That's like bottom tier Peppers for me. Sorry, not sorry. But the rest of it's actually quite strong. The Harry Styles record is a really good shout. Harry Styles made better music after he left One Direction, which is crazy if you think about what that band represented at the time. But Harry Styles has really like gone to grow into himself. So like not some bad shots, PJ. Kind of proud.
Yeah, I actually do enjoy that Red Hot Chili Peppers album. I think it is
my guy.
I do genuinely enjoy it. Evan be there with the hot takes. I also love that you include the Spider-Man soundtrack. RRP Juice WRLD. Juice WRLD had one of those songs on there that I used to play like all the time. That's besides the Sunset record, that Juice WRLD record was the second one I played the most out of that soundtrack. Overall, amazing soundtrack for an amazing film.
Oh, totally. And I think that for me, like, it's always going to be like the music is so strong and so like ingrained in the film that I think that the album will always continue to like go side by side with it, because it was just very, very strong. And again, it's like so tied to Miles's story. Every song feels so specific to what they're doing. Like, I love it for that. So there's just something about it. I could listen to it on a loop and never be bored. Home is arguably maybe my favorite. Of course, that was the song that they used in the trailer, but like, it's so good, man. Like, I love it.
And I think this is one of the rare examples of a song becoming popular because the movie was so good.
Right.
Like the Sunshine record became one of the biggest songs ever because the movie was just so great and people wanted to enjoy the vibe of the movie through the music. So I dig it.
Yeah, man.
Also, we have Chris Clark saying music videos are from a bygone era, the era where a song is produced like a movie. It's a shame. I mean, there's a lot of, but here's the thing that you have to pay attention, because we're gonna touch on this later. And I think RB3 might as well, where we like Kendrick Lamar has a lot of fucking music videos that really capture specific things. Like if you look at King Kunta, All Right. There's more that I can't think of. I think King's Dead tells a really cool story. It just depends the music that you're listening to be honest.
I do think there's a point though. And I mean, there's also the conversation to be had that when MTV changed from being music television to what it's become now, there was a disconnect in what music videos were being done. Because I mean, music videos used to be huge, and not saying that we don't get them now. I mean, Eminem's music video for Darkness was incredible and haunting, and he did that last year, but not every musician is going to be doing stuff like that anymore. And that's just because times have changed and we've kind of, shifted a little bit.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think really the hip hop has embraced music videos really well, but for a lot of other genres, it's kind of taken a backseat, particularly with I am going to have a album later on down the line that actually has a full visual companion to it too. I see a lot of that happening. Like I know for speaking of Radiohead, Tom York, he has that short film of Paul Thomas Anderson, Anima, which is like the companion piece to like the album. Anima, and I love that short film. If people haven't watched that on Netflix, it's a Netflix exclusive, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, one of the coolest short films / extended music videos ever. So that I kind of hope maybe one day Netflix will become the new platform for that. Who knows?
That's true. And also on that note, we also had Runaway come out this year. this decade, sorry, which there is an argument. I'm not saying it is because Thriller does exist, but Runaway you could argue is one of the best music videos of all time.
Yeah, 100%.
And because what it did and what it represented, I think you might get into this a little bit more later, but like it was an artistic statement, and if you partner that with the live performance, I think it was during the AMAs, it could be something else. With the Pusha T, like
VMAs, yeah.
That singular song and the production behind it past the music was so impactful and so important to that moment.
Absolutely. Right. So I'll just jump into my 64, right? 64?
Yeah, 64.
Okay, cool. All right, so my number 6 pick is one of another one that I enjoyed in high school a lot and fell in love with and still listen to very frequently to this day, is Random Access Memories from Daft Punk. That one is one of my absolutely one of my favorite Daft Punk records. On top of being just one of my favorite kind of electric influenced kind of records I've listened to in my entire life. I remember, they have even though they are quote unquote electronic, like they incorporate so many different genres into all of their music. I mean, songs like Love Game, obviously the big hits with like the one with Pharrell, everything that they touch and everything that they touch in Random Access Memory is absolutely perfection. And I think this album kind of it won. I think when the year came out, it won like so many Grammys and it had like so much acclaim. I think people just kind of let it slip under the radar because it was so celebrated when it came out. But it got celebrated so much because it legitimately deserved it. So that's absolutely one of my favorites too. Number 5, I got to go with Currents from Tame Impala. I think this is probably one of the seminal alternative records of the past decade. And it has like, it literally, I think probably transformed. Almost every single song on this album you've seen in either like a commercial or a promo for something or used in a movie or an indie movie or something like that. It just has so many, it has such a big impact when it came out, almost to the point where it became like almost like a crossover kind of thing where people who were not alternative fans or not indie fans ended up discovering it and latching on to the Tame Impala hype. So that is definitely 100% my number 5. And I remember when it came out in 2015, still vividly remember when it came out. I was being blown away by the instrumental, so the music, the musicality of it, and all across the board. It's just amazing. And finally, my number 4 spot, got to represent Frank Ocean and the 2011 hit Channel Orange. That is a gorgeous album, beautiful album for not only for the music in and of itself, but like Evan had mentioned when he talking about Kanye's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, what Channel Orange meant to Frank Ocean, the idea of like this dude who has been an acclaimed songwriter who had a debut mixtape, kind of / album that came out and did well, but then had this come out and kind of be a new, it kind of just shattered the earth. Have songs like Thinking About You, which is groundbreaking, Pyramids, which is a 9-minute masterpiece, and the idea of him in his personal life being somebody who was in the closet for as long as he was, and then coming out and expressing that through the album and his work. So it's just really, really great.
Yeah, Channel Orange reminds me of what Jay Electronica should have done. While I do like Jay Electronica's like newest record, I think it's like really important for right now because hip hop's in a really stagnant place in my opinion. Frank Ocean carried his momentum. He's like, I got this. You guys are going to listen to it and you're going to cry and love it as much as I'm making you to do it. That's definitely a great pick. The Tame Impala one is really good too. I'm not a big Tame Impala guy, but I get it. Like I get the hype behind it. Every time I roll into a pregame for the club or something like that, Tame Impala is always on. I get it. So
it's just vibe. Yeah. It's perfect vibe music,
It is.
I love the inclusion of Daft Punk because I'm a big Daft Punk guy. I actually like Tron Legacy's score really battled not being on my list because it's not necessarily like an album in the way that we were talking about, but that score is just so beautiful. And like, I always love their music. So I'm glad that they got a little bit of a shout out because then I could actually shout out Legacy while I was at it, which goes a long way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, if we're talking about best movie soundtracks of all time, Tron Legacy deserves to be in that conversation.
Maybe we'll have to do that. Maybe we should do that before this quarantine's over. We'll all come back and do our top soundtracks because I think or top scores because I think there's a lot to be said about that.
For sure. Absolutely.
All right,
there's
Evan.
A little Bradford there's a little Giacchino that is going to do a lot of talking during that one. But with that said, we're going to go through my 6 through 4. I don't think any of these 3 are going to be on the list. So that's interesting on its own. But number 6, we have All American Badass by Joey Badass. This record grew on me over time. At first, I'm like, who's this guy who is screaming at me? He doesn't scream, but who's this guy that like is pushing his message towards me as hard as he can? And then I heard Temptation. That's about 2 or 3 songs in to the record. And Temptation's kind of about this song where it opens up this girl who's like, speaking from the perspective of Black people, and she's like, we have rights, we should be owed these rights, and it's really moving. And he goes into the song where you dip in and out of being this angry person versus, oh, I need to do what's right for not only myself but everybody else. And the record continues with that, with this whole dichotomy of like, what is the line? Am I doing too much or am I not doing enough? And it's a really great record. It's really accessible. You can listen to it and you don't feel like you're being, I don't know what the right word, but like that it's like too much on the ears or you're like, what is happening? But you get a really good message on into yourself and you're like, oh, he's actually saying something to me. And I also think Devastated is one of the best summer jams ever. The hook, I used to be so devastated. And then he's like, at times I thought we'd never make it. I used to be so devastated. Yeah. And the whole point is like, I used to be upset. I used to be mad, but like I've been enlightened and we're going to have a good ass time now. My senior year, we did a lip dub to it. I don't know why. Don't ask. Florida's a weird state. But that's my number 6. All American Badass, Joey Badass. Number 5, we have 21 Pilots, Trench. This record is insane. Holy shit. It opens up with Jumpsuit, which you could argue is one of the best songs of that year, if not the decade. Really great bass line. Josh Dun goes hard on the drums. And then it moves into Levitate, where, hip hop, where they go into their hip hop influence, where you see Tyler Joseph dropping a couple of bars there, saying that like shit's been hard, shit's been tough, but I'm going to levitate myself up. And then they go into their little reggae influence with My Blood and Morph, and the record just becomes a deconstruction of a man who has been through a lot, but they get through it, and it really progresses their music from Blurry Face, which it's really enjoyable to me. A lot to break down from it, but it's a little sloppy from time to time. But Trench is that next step. Trench is like, oh, we're making great music, and you're going to listen to it, and I think. With that and Ammo too, it's really going to push the genre of rock forward past, just basic. We're going to record drums. We're going to record the guitar. We're going to record a bass, and that's it. Where it's like, oh, we're actually going to do our best to infuse this new technology that we have here with us, and we're gonna push even just music into a direction where it can be. And then number 4, After Laughter, Paramore. Oh man, look. I like Paramore's Paramore, their self-titled record that came out in 2013. I could be wrong on that date. But After Laughter did something for me at a time where the fun offset story. This girl asked, I asked her to prom. She said yes. And then she's like, oh, I don't like you anymore. So we went to prom as friends. Right? It was a nightmare. But
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry to hear that.
That's the worst. Absolute worst.
But it's funny. She introduced me to Paramore. And luckily for me, I was able to take the person away from the band. But I used After Laughter this album where it's about heartbreak and how about to get through your day, even if you might be depressed all the time, like literally depressed. And it has this really cool juxtaposition where the lyrics are sad as hell. If you just read the lyrics as if it was poetry, you would be sad forever. But the music is this really great 80s based pop, and you want to move and you want to dance to it, but you're remembering, hey, I'm actually sad, and that is okay. They have a song called Pools where it's about drowning in yourself and figuring out why you are in the place that you are. And it just keeps developing and keeps going, and it really not only unpacks itself as a record, but it makes you unpack yourself as well, and it makes you ask questions about yourself. And I think that's why this record hits me on so many levels, because every single time I listen to it, and you have hits like Told You So, Hard Times, which I'm sure the world heard, Hard Times, But that's the reason why it makes it so great, because you can dance to it, but you can still understand what they're going for. And that's why After Laughter is like my number 4 record of the decade. It is insane. It is so good. And it makes me really want to, watch Paramore in concert and maybe marry Hayley Williams one day. Probably not going to happen, but one can hope.
I can get on board with Paramore for sure. I mean, they were popular back when I was in high school. That's where they all started. I saw them at Warped Tour. I've seen them a couple of times live. Like, they're just a really fun band to see, man. Like, it's good to see a little bit of rock love coming from you.
Yeah, I too want to shout out the Paramore After Laughter album. I really enjoy that one too. I really enjoy, like you said, it kind of has a lot of it does have some like dance records that you can really get behind and move behind, but also it's consistent with like the Paramore brand. So it all around overall it's one of their finest efforts I think they've ever put out.
Yeah. Also, Dorian Parks was saying that's how he feels about Normani. Him and her are going to be endgame. I hope I have that same look with Hayley Williams. If you see this right now, I will take you out to dinner. That's all I have to say.
Everyone who's in the chat should start tweeting at Hayley Williams. It'd be hilarious. It just tweet at her, let her know that Evan wants to take her on a date. It'll go very well.
It's gonna be like the Alex Marzonia effect.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
But it won't work.
Yeah. We'll make it happen. It'll be good. All right, rolling into my number 6 again, because I know that I'm going to be the only person who has this on here. I'm really excited to talk about it, and that is Vaxis Act 1, The Unheavenly Creatures by Coheed and Cambria. Coheed and Cambria is my all-time favorite band. They are a band that I have been with for the beginning, like since 2002. It's actually something that I actually was talking about with Vinny Mancuso, who he and I were geeking out because he saw my tattoo. He and I don't meet very many other fans who care about Coheed in the same way that we do. Vaxis Act 1 was like a very big return to form for them because they had taken an album off. They've always done big sci-fi concept albums, and Claudio had wanted to do something personal on the album before, and then they went back to this grand sci-fi storytelling, and it's just so ethereal and cool and like very hard, fun rock that this album might be, and I say this very cautiously, it may be like their second or third best album that they've ever done. And that's incredible praise coming from me, considering I think that they've pretty much knocked every album out of the park. But there's something about this that just speaks to me in so many ways. I mean, one of the songs on it ended up on my workout playlist, which I don't ever really think about, but it would be Unheavenly Creatures, which is like the very title song. There's just something about it. If you've never listened to Coheed, start with Unheavenly Creatures. Like, listen to this album all the way through. Listen to that song. I think you're going to get wrapped up in it in the same way that I feel. Like, there is grand storytelling in a musical scale that you don't normally see, because they definitely harken back to like the time of Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, and that's like what they're going for, and I love that for them, and I love that for me because it just works, and I get comic books out of it because they have a whole comic book series about their music, and it makes me happy. My number 5 though, and Evan, just get ready to shake your head and be upset, is Revival by Eminem. Revival is a hot take, I know, because a lot of people do not like this album, but Revival came out at like the most right time for me that I fell in love with it all over again. There are some songs on here that just really hit the right way. I was actually on BC's podcast recently, and he and I were talking about it, and we both had Revival way higher in our like top 10 list of Eminem than most people normally do. There was a time when he didn't really reach out to other artists and he was feuding with people all the time, but there was something about him like finally getting other artists in the way he was, like Beyonce, and having them on this that worked for me. And it really felt like he also was trying to tap into a new generation to show that he could also still like play with the best, but also still be him. And that went a really long way for me. I think that there's just so many songs on it that are great, like Home with Alicia Keys and River by Ed Sheeran, or with Ed Sheeran, are both just so phenomenal. And I just like it a lot. And then my number 4 is Petty by UTK, Udakarsh Mbakdar. If you guys don't know who he is, he actually was supposed to be in Hamilton originally. He is friends with Lin-Manuel Miranda. He had a drinking problem and he was not able to be in the show. And so when he cleaned up, he started doing music on his own. He was actually in Freestyle Love Supreme on Broadway until earlier this year. And he is one of my favorite like up and coming hip hop artists. I love him a lot. If you guys have seen Barbershop, the next cut, he's actually in it. He's one of the newer characters in the film, and UTK's music is so good. This album came to me through my friend Maxwell Haddad, and it hit me at the right time with everything happening in my life. Like, this album is about what happens when a relationship falls apart and you're trying to move on. And there's something just about every song, every beat, everything about it just works for me. If you guys look up the song Nope on YouTube, just type in Nope UTK and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. That music video is fun. It's just like he did it for like nothing and he did it for himself, but the album itself just speaks to me in the right way. And it was what I needed at the time in my life that I didn't know I needed it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the UTK shout out. He's done a lot of really interesting stuff, even through like social media and just do his, like you say, it was a barbershop, and I actually haven't listened to that album fully, but now that I see that so high on your list, I absolutely want to check it out for sure.
It's so good, man. There's something about his music. And like you said, he's used social media in the right way. Like, one of the songs he did, I think it was last year, he did a song called Rufio, and he had the kid from Hook in it with him and Lin-Manuel Miranda. Like, it's such a cool song, and he's done a lot of little things like that along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. I do gotta say with the M pick, the album was slandered, and I understand why, but I do have to say, Walk on Water is a great, fantastic song, and there is something on I think BBC One radio, or you can find online, where he did Walk on Water back to back with Stan, and the whole point is like, oh shit, I can flex my muscle. I am one of the greatest rappers of all time. I did Walk on Water. You listen to this, great bars. I also did Stan, and it's just a really cool dichotomy that he did live there. So yeah, that's my commentary there.
No, and I saw someone in the chat said, "Yikes, PJ." Though Eminem could have needed to hear what you said at the time. Like, I know it's not popular, but that's the thing about music, kind of altogether. And in a lot of ways, I think a lot of albums can get looked back on in hindsight in the way that we look back on movies. And I think Revival might actually get looked back at later on, and people might realize, like, at the moment, it wasn't what they needed, or even what they wanted, but it was more what they needed. And I think that there's going to be something to be said about that album in time. Also, shout out Danny Coast, who loves Coheed in the chat. So there's someone else other than me.
Hey.
All right. So RB3, we're getting down to our top 3.
Yeah.
You're 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got?
Okay. So my number 3, talking about Walk on Water featuring Beyonce. I gotta shout out Beyonce. This Beyonce album, quite arguably her best album, and some people would argue one of the best of the decade. And I would argue that too. It's Lemonade. When that album came out in 2016, had it was what I was talking about earlier with an album that had a complete visual companionship. I mean, it literally came with a whole hour special on HBO of like these beautiful visuals that kind of perfectly represented what the album said. That's not even to mention like the music in and of itself, right? You got like Freedom featuring Kendrick Lamar. You have, which I was working at the BET Awards during that time, and I actually got to see her, Beyonce and Kendrick Lamar like perform that live, like right next to the stage. which was just amazing. On top of that, Formation, All Night. What else is on there? Hold Up. Yeah, Hold Up. All of these albums. And, and again, and speaking on Frank Ocean and speaking on Kanye and speaking on a lot of these artists on these lists, you look at the place that they were in their personal lives, right? This is after she had been, she had been cheated on by Jay-Z, and how is she expressing those emotions? And it still comes around to this overall euphoric feeling of like love and acceptance still coming at the end, and all of these like really, really deep and powerful messages. So overall, it's just an amazing piece of music, and endlessly re-listenable too. And I think, there's an argument to be made that it single-handedly boistered Tidal into the top conversation when it comes to streaming services too. So overall, just everything that represented the surprise drop model that she had previously perfected on her self-titled album, Beyonce, and then did again with this one. It just some of the most game-changing stuff in the entire music industry. So that's my number 3. And like I said, love the song with Kendrick Lamar on there, Freedom. So I'm going to go to my number 2 pick, which is also by Kendrick Lamar, and that's Good Kid, Mad City. That is absolutely, positively one of my favorite albums of all time. I remember listening to this album when it came out in 2012. Granted, I have been a Kendrick Lamar fan since like 2009, like way before the hype was even like existed. But like this one, rightfully so, launched them into the stratosphere of and pretty much started the conversation of him being one of the greatest rappers of all time, because it is a perfect narrative album. I mean, like when you talk about storytelling, I mean, it feels like a movie. It feels like cinema, but all with just through the music, just auditory. And I don't think there's only a handful of music videos that even came off of this album, but the music videos don't even matter, because you could fully visualize the story in and of itself. That's how precise and how lean the storytelling is in this album. And again, like I love To Pimp a Butterfly, but to me personally, as a storyteller, as a movie watcher, frankly, I like the fact that this is more of a clear like story, a clear like narrative, like that's kind of driving the whole thing, and then it has a great intro. Some of the best Kendrick songs of all time: Swimming Pools, Backseat Freestyle. It's almost I don't think there's one skippable song on this entire album. So B Don't Kill My Vibe. All of those, absolutely amazing.
Those are such great choices, man. Like Kendrick, especially. Like, what a great shout out! That album really is fantastic.
And it's funny that we talk about that, but I do want to go back to the Lemonade shout, because 444 came out at the time, right before Lemonade, and that was like, oh, we're going through some shit, and like I'm gonna put out this really conceptual album that you're gonna listen to. Like you have the story of OJ on there and stuff, and then Family Feud was on there. Yeah, and it was just like, it does something that after where the music was really uplifting. We hear the yeah. You have that, but then you also have like, oh, we're in a Family Feud. I fucked up. But then Beyonce came with the Lemonade, where she's like, nah, dude, you really did, and you're not gonna cover this up with music, and I'm not gonna let you like get away with your bullshit.
Right, exactly.
And I've heard people say this. I love Hold Up. Hold Up is probably one of my favorite songs on that record. But like, what she was saying was like, take charge of what your emotions are and take charge of how you can fix them.
Absolutely.
Such a great record. And then we'll hear about Good Kid, Mad City later.
Yeah, no, definitely. I 100% agree. And I think, with especially with Lemonade, it just goes to show like how much somebody's personal emotions could carry on into their music making and their performance. Because I also think there's some of the best singing Beyonce's done in one of her albums too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm not even like huge on like Beyonce as a singer, not because I don't like her. I think she's incredibly talented. I just didn't listen to her a lot because, again, my taste has always leaned more like classic rock and metal. But Lemonade is one of the all-time great albums. Like, I can't even deny how powerful and how good it is, and what she was able to accomplish with it is something that we rarely see, because we all kind of knew what was going on, and for her to be able to come out and do just that was such a like watershed moment almost for the entire decade.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I think I'm gonna move on. We're gonna give my 2 and my 3 and 2. Number 3, I don't think this record's gonna pop up, which I get, but also it's gonna be Pusha T's Daytona.
Ooh, okay.
Shit, it is a very short, very sweet, very concise record at 21 minutes. But I have never seen a record come out where you have Kanye and Pusha T produced, and Pusha T literally just saying, "I'm here. Don't forget about me. I rap the way I'm gonna rap. Whether you like the facts I talk about drug dealer or not, I literally give 2 fucks, and I am going to go all out and tell you guys how I feel." On top of that, this is the record where Drake literally got destroyed. We have What Would Meek Do, and we have Infrared. And with that, and I know the song isn't on the record, but we also have the story of Adidon, which came out right around that time, where you practically had one of the biggest artists, not only in hip hop, but literally in the world, get unpacked, but rightfully so. It wasn't uncalled for. It was something that you saw it coming, and he fucking did it. But outside of that, you have bangers like If You Know, You Know. You blast that shit full bass in the car, your shit will be shaking, but not for a bad reason. You have The Games We Play, where he's practically saying, "Hey, you're going to do this? All right, let's fucking go. These are the games we play. We're going to get through it." And we have Hard Piano, which has that Rick Ross fucking coming in and doing some great ass verses. We have Comeback Baby, which is just another banger along the lines with If You Know, You Know in the games we play. And we also have Santeria, where he's just pronouncing his statement and where he is in the hip hop industry and how he doesn't care that he might not be the most popular because he knows music is great and he knows that it's for a specific audience. Daytona by Pusha T came out in 2018, came out during that time where Kanye produced, I think, 5 records in a row. I think along with Tiana Taylor, I could be wrong.
Yep.
We also,
Yay.
the Yay, Kids See Ghosts during that whole time, and this Pusha T record just shined through for me. I didn't think I'd be a Pusha T fan, but then I became one after this because my God, it's just amazing. And then number 2, it's hard not to put this record on there, but we have Hamilton.
Ooh,
we're gonna be talking about that, so let's go ahead and wait on that.
Yeah, we'll wait. All I have to say is I repulsed against this record at first because when it's pushed down your ears by a bunch of theater kids, you're like, no, stop. It's enough. And then you take the time to listen to it on yourself and you just start listening to it literally over and over and over again. We'll break down further why, but Hamilton is insane.
Yeah, no, I love those 2 picks. In full transparency, I actually haven't listened to the Hamilton soundtrack at all.
Okay.
I completely. I'm one of those dudes that like I haven't seen the musical yet. I haven't seen the live performance yet. And I know they're about to. Well, they were planning on releasing it in theaters. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But if they do, whenever it releases in theaters, or if I actually do get to see it live, I kind of want to experience it for the first time in that platform.
Totally.
But I mean, I know of the acclaim. I know of the hype. It's totally warranted of the hype. I've heard a few songs off of it, like, through like TV performances and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'll probably listen to it, as soon as I could get around to seeing the movie or the stage show. Or
I get that. That's fair.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of talk about it too once we get to it, because I do want to talk about that because I understand exactly where you're coming from. And Hamilton is one of the very rare musicals where pretty much every beat and frame of the show is on the album, which is so rare. So it's actually listenable and like tells the story. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. But I'm glad that it's there. And
also, thank you, Evan, for shouting out Pusha T's Daytona. Oh my goodness, that is an amazing album. There's never been, for one, Pusha T is one of the best rappers ever, and this is his most perfect album. It's only 7 songs. And you think like for an album that's 7 songs in 21 minutes, that is too short. But like it doesn't feel short at all. I mean, he's going for 7. It's 21 minutes of just straight bars.
It's funny that you guys bring that, because that UTK album that I was talking about, it's about 30 minutes. So it's the same thing. Like, it's just quick, it's fast. And I'd like that when someone does something like that, because I actually haven't listened to that album. And now I need to, because I'm very curious. Like, the way you guys are selling it reminds me of the UTK stuff. And now I'm like, I've got to check it out.
You know, that's ironic. And I think we could maybe dip farther into this later, but like, that's the Kanye influence. As shitty as some people might want to hear this, he pushed whenever that, I think it was 5 albums all came out once. He goes, we're going to keep these short. We're going to keep them digestible. If we're going to have masses listen to them, they're going to be short. And all those records were short, and this just happened to be the best one out of that batch. But since then, we've gotten shorter records from a multitude of artists because they get it. They're like, wait, we have a crowd of people who have shorter attention spans. Let's make some tight, concise records that people can actually listen to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. So I guess that's me now. So, you know, we're just talking a little bit about Broadway and stuff. And so my number 3 album of the decade is actually going to be Beetlejuice, the musical. Beetlejuice just kind of hit, again, like all these albums, hit at the right time. And I just think that also, on top of Beetlejuice being like the superior version of that story, I think every song on it just really speaks to me in different ways. I love all the different styles of music that are on throughout it. I just think that there's something very kind of meta and fun about the way that it's done. And I could not stop listening to it. There's a song on there that called Dead Mom that is so beautiful. And I feel like it is such an ode to people who are trying to find something out of loss, like when you've lost someone, and that feeling of what are we doing? Like, you want to believe that they're still out there, but the other part of you is like, there's no way, like there's a beginning and an end, and that's just where we're at. But you're pulling so heavily, wanting to find anything to hold on to. And I really like that. And I think that for a show that's, you know, they are very straightforward all the way through. Like, it's a show about death, but like for this one in particular, in this song, to be so just pulling at your heartstrings in the right way, it hits it just right for me. But even then, like when you get towards the end, there's a song called Home, and that's kind of right where everything really turns around, and you see that sort of through line about you can also move on, because there's something to be said about that. And I know I've talked a lot about moving on and like what that means in life, and that's because I'm in a place right now where I've had to force myself to move on and like become the next person in my life in that stage. So there's just a lot to unpack in it, but Beetlejuice just hits right. It's one that I think for the most part, if you've never seen it, you can still listen through and get what they're going for, but there's just a lot of really, really great songs on it throughout. And I really, really love it. And again, I'm also just like a theater person. So of course, an album like this is going to speak to me. But then we have an album that this is almost a cheat, but not really. And people are not going to be surprised if you've been listening. And that is The Afterman by Coheed and Cambria. And the reason it's a little bit of a cheat is it was actually a double album, but then they re-released it as one. So I was able to get 2 albums towards the top for the price of one. The Afterman, again, was this was supposed to be their last album, if you will, where they were telling a big cosmic story. And every song on it, like from beginning to end, is just such like a transformative journey for this character who is just so like lost in this world and he doesn't know what's going on. There's some great songs. Dark Side of Me, two's my favorite one, Iron Fist, Good Night, Fair Lady. Like, there's so many songs that just pop and I can just hear it and I feel it and I feel what Coheed is going for. And there's almost like this existential crisis of life while I listen to it in every right way, because they, again, doing these like cosmic stories, there's just something about the way that it hits you in if you're listening to it and you get so wrapped up in the storytelling of it all. I love things like that, because to RB3's point earlier, as someone who loves movies, I love when someone can take an album and like tell a story that I feel enamored with in the same way that I could picture it on the screen. Like, if you can do that on my headphones with no like picture or anything, that's incredible. And I think that Coheed has really continued to push that type of storytelling, and they've only gotten better over time. And Afterman, in my opinion, may be their masterpiece in that like storytelling ability.
No, 100%. I love that that it's an album that can speak to like the visual kind of aesthetic and the overall message that you can kind of picture it in your mind. I love that.
Yeah, man. I think that goes a long way, and I think that there's a lot to be said about that. And again, because I'm like the one person outside of Danny who was in the chat who like loves Coheed the way that I do, that there's just something to be said about being able to do that sort of storytelling on a level that people actually respond to.
Absolutely.
Evan, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Evan.
And also, to your point,
you
you're talking about how, like, you know, all of our lists are going to be different. I think the Beetlejuice thing is really specific because personally for me, when it comes to musicals, like, the story has to relate to you in order to actually understand what exactly the message they're trying to get across or whatnot. But I'm really glad that like Beetlejuice hit you that way, because I know there's a bunch of musicals that like I can enjoy the music and I get where that character is coming from, but it might not hit you as hard. So I think it's really interesting that like Beetlejuice hits you in the way it does, and it's a really interesting idea of how, you know, sometimes musicals, while they can be entertaining, a good story to tell, how the music can actually hit you in a specific way.
Yeah, totally. All right, so I guess that leaves us with our number ones.
Yeah, number one time. Let's go.
Number one time. All right. Yeah, I'm excited. Let's start with our friend RB3 here because I need to know what his number one film or number one album of the decade is.
Well, as previously mentioned before, I said I was going to talk about it before, and the time has arrived. My number one album is indeed My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Mr. Kanye West. It was it's to me, it's one of the most gorgeous albums ever put together. It, you know, obviously it's Kanye. He felt like, you know, Evan spoke on it before. It was after the whole Taylor Swift debacle, and he felt like he needed to come back, and he kind of locked himself away. He took himself and a bunch of rappers, and they flew to a studio in Hawaii and locked themselves up for like 6 months, and then they came out with this, which is quite literally one of the finest pieces of music, you know, in general. I mean, outside of just hip hop, like the hip hop in it is amazing, no doubt. But when you're talking about like the influence of like classical music to, you know, there's a lot of rock, heavy guitar influences that you see throughout the album. It goes to show the range that in which somebody like Kanye can endow, and, you know, especially with the collaborations with Mike Dean, who was a huge influence on the overall sound of this album as well. And, you know, it's unbelievable how many people just came out of this whole album. I mean, you're talking about, this was kind of the breakthrough moment for Nicki Minaj. Like literally her verse on Monster is still to this day arguably one of the top 5 hip hop verses of all time. Not to mention all of the lights, which Evan, you said, you know, some will have an argument for putting it as one of the best songs of all time. I personally, it's my favorite song of all time. I distinctly remember listening to this song when I was in 8th grade, and you know, I even remember when I was in 8th grade, like I was taking a trip to Istanbul, Turkey for a science competition. But like that was my first time ever like having to travel, like that kind of travel, leave the country. So I had to get a passport. But like I didn't even have a passport like the day I was supposed to take the trip. So like me and my parents, we woke up at like 6 a.m. and went to the Social Security building and like had to get an expedited passport. And I distinctly remember listening to All the Lights and like playing that song over and over to provide myself with like this feeling of like self-euphoria and like getting, you know, and motivation and everything like that. And just from a musicality standpoint is gorgeous. Gorgeous is, speaking of gorgeous, the song Gorgeous with Kid Cudi and Rakim is absolutely amazing. Power is dope. Soul Paul, Devil in the New Dress, Blame Game, featuring the great Chris Rock. Lost in the World, featuring Bon Iver. All across the board. It's absolutely, positively my favorite album of the decade. And I think it's, you know, one of the best albums, not just hip hop albums, but one of the best albums of all time.
Yeah, dude, it's so hard to argue with that. Like, just even doing the clear facts that like it, and also the moment it came out and the reason it came out, it wasn't just purposeful. Oh, hey, we're just gonna put out this record. It's, oh, I have a statement to make. Y'all been mean. Y'all been saying shit about me. So I'm about to flex on all y'all right now. So, and that's kind of exactly what he did. I'm very glad, very happy about it. So like, and even on that gorgeous man, when he ends on the line, you forgot about my two things, my black balls. Shit was so funny, but it's the right type. It's the right kind of funny. But then you go into things like Hell of a Life, Blame Game, which it takes a couple of listens, but it's so emotional. I get it, man. I get it. The reason, like, for me, it wasn't higher is just because I wasn't listening to it when it came out, but I'm sure if I did, it would probably be higher. It's so good front to back.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
No, it is. It's a great album. It's just, there's something about it. I think Kanye just rocks it. I mean, he's one of the most influential artists of all time. Like, whether you like him or not, it's true. And I think that this album in particular, like, you look at his whole discography, there's few albums that can really stand out in the same way that this one does. Like, and for the springboard it became for so many artists, that's so important. Like, it's again similar to Beyonce, like that watershed moment for a lot of people where we're like, look at these people and look how talented they are, and like they have careers because of it. That cannot go underlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. It's insane, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Evan, it's that time. What is your number one album of the decade? Let's hear it.
Here. I have definitely cheated here. PJ knows this.
You definitely did.
It's three records back to back to back. We have Good Kid, Mad City, To Pimp a Butterfly, and Damn. Ooh. I kind of chose all three.
Yep.
Right.
He went all the way for it, and you know what? I'm not mad.
So, barring Section 8, which I think is a great record, but it doesn't stand on the pedestal that the other three do. It does a thing where you see him grow and flex as an artist. Good Kid, Mad City was really when he blew up past hip hop. It was like, oh shit, swimming pools? We just listened to a landmark in music history. And even past that, it's not even my favorite record on the album, where like Poetic Justice to me is insane. Like, Poetic Justice does something that like I didn't expect to do it for me, and I fucking love that song. But you know, Backstreet Freestyle in the context of the record is almost devastating. Yet when you hear outside, it is one hell of a banger. And just what Good Kid, Mad City does. And we go into To Pimp a Butterfly. I can get into this record and kind of like how it opened up my eyes to things I couldn't see, and how Kendrick's, how is you could call like that, what's the word I'm looking for? Not transferable, like that transparent, not transparent. You get that idea where like he progresses past just the hip hop, and he progresses past towards his art, towards his audience. Mm-hmm. That record to me opened up a lot of eyes that I didn't see because of, you know, I grew up differently than a lot of other people did. And it opened up my eyes, like things, how racism and how it's more systemic than we think it is now, and how it's, oh, we actually have something against us, and how we can fight against this, and or how can we actually react to it correctly. And then we have Damn. So I was sitting in my not my apartment. I was in a business conference, 2016, I think, when The Heart Part 4 came out, which I think is slept on. I don't know why it's not on Spotify. That song is incredible. But it was announcing, oh, this record called Damn, it's coming out. Be ready for it. And then Damn came out. Damn was amazing. Like, it was, oh, Drake's going to come out with all this music that you guys are going to listen to. Like, God's Plan, A Nice for It. Got it. But I'm going to do what he does, but so much better that it progresses past anything that you could dream of. I mean, we have songs like DNA, Humble. Like, if you didn't listen to Humble when it came out, I don't know what you're going after. Freaking Loyalty. I know some hip-hop heads shit on the song. I don't know why, though. Because it's in such a smooth ride, and you're just listening, you're like, oh, I got it. Loyalty. And, you know, but then it goes in deeper into songs like Fear and Duckworth, which you could argue is one of the greatest songs that Kendrick has ever done storytelling-wise. The reason why I group all three of these together, because we have here I am on the scene. Here's what I'm actually doing to show what you guys, oh, I'm the greatest of all time. And here's oh, you're testing my shit. I don't know why. Let me put you in your place. And that's why I think they can all three go together, because they each have their own reasoning, but they each kind of come together because of the artist that Kendrick is. So that's my best record of all time.
No, I 100% agree with everything that you said there, Evan. Again, To Pimp a Butterfly is one of those seminal albums that, like you said, addressed a lot of themes of like racism, incarceration, policing, over policing, all these major things that played a huge part in different communities when it first came out. And damn, I mean the Element, I think to that one is one of my absolute favorite records on that, songs on that one. And XXX with Bono from U2, or just all of U2, I guess. That one is absolutely insane too. I mean, I
that live performance too that he did with it.
Yeah, you know what? And I actually went to the tour for that album and got to see him perform all of those songs live. And I'm telling you, it was by far. I mean, I also went to the Life of Pablo tour, which is an amazing tour as well. But I mean, that Kendrick tour, man. I mean, he, like, as he's a brilliant storyteller, like you could clearly see through his music videos, but he translates that so well, even in his live performances. I mean, it was the most visually dynamic live performance I ever seen, which is saying a lot considering that in that very same show, opening for Kendrick was Travis Scott riding a giant bird. The fact that Kendrick can come out and top that just goes and speaks brilliantly to how much of an impressive artist he is. And like I said, Triple X, Fear, Duckworth, like you said, that shows that to me, damn shows both the storytelling aspects that you see and Good Kid, Mad City with songs like Triple X and Duckworth and Fear, but then it also has that soulful rhythm, rhythm and deeper underlying messages that you see in something like To Pimp a Butterfly. So it's like the best of both worlds. So overall, I totally agree. That's a great, even those 3 albums, I love that. Kendrick Lamar is literally my favorite rapper of all time. So I love that.
I do have to say on the Element thing, when we're talking about Damn and how it's calling out literally hip hop, the specific line is there's a difference between black artists and whack artists.
Yeah, and still quote that to this day. I still quote that to this day.
Dude, it's wild when he said that. I'm like, oh shit. Yeah. But you don't see this sometimes, and like he really knew what he was doing. PJ, thoughts?
I mean, you and I had already talked about it off mic when you had decided this was the way you were going to go, and you were like, "Should I cheat? Like, is this like the wrong thing to do?" And no, I 100% agree with everything, and the reason being is that I think all 3 of these albums just like so seamlessly come together as one, in the same way that I kind of took an actual double album and just smashed it together as one, because they speak for themselves, but they all speak together as like one unit at the same time. And I think that there's just something to be said about that. And Kendrick really he's such a great storyteller. And that really it goes such a long way, because again, the 3 of us here are all like very big into storytelling. And I think that when you look at some of the albums we've all chosen so far, storytelling is vital to them. And I think that that's one of the things that we overlook a lot when it comes to music, is the storytelling aspect to it. Like, is it great if an album is just great because the songs are good? Yes, absolutely. But it's even better when I can put something on and be like moved through a story. And that's part of the reason, like I mentioned earlier, I love Common. I think all of Common's albums have been the same way. Like, he's such an interesting storyteller. And that is why I continue to go back to him. Eminem in the same way. I think that he continues to be an interesting storyteller. For better or worse, I don't know if people always agree with that, but it does work for me. So there's something to be said about that in that light, and especially with these albums.
I also do have one last thing to say, and this is me flexing Kendrick for as long as I'm going to be able to. But not too long ago, Taylor Swift was named the artist of the decade by some place, but it got a lot of buzz. Someone that wasn't even mentioned that much was Kendrick, which gonna dip into it just a little bit here, but like, how do you make To Pimp a Butterfly, which you could argue is one of the most landmark records of literally all time, Good Kid, Mad City, which transformed hip hop literally forever, and then you win a Pulitzer Prize for Damn, and you're not named Artist of the Decade?
Yeah.
if I had to pick one, it would be Kendrick Lamar. And it's so funny. I don't think he's one of my favorite artists, which is ironic in itself. But like, just like, how do you not name him artist of the decade? You know, just he does so many things right, and he speaks this message, and he lives this like fairly humble life. If you were to like take a look at his podcast and interviews and how he talks about himself, he's very just well spoken, great representative, someone who you just want, you know, being the forefront of music. So that's all I gotta say.
I know quite recently there was literally a whole controversy for the fact that like he brought his cousin a brand new like Toyota Corona or whatever, and everybody's like, oh, why didn't you buy her like a Bentley or something? Like that's just not how Kendrick rolls. Like, hey, he's literally gonna get a nice Toyota that functions, that rolls, because that's not, the money isn't, you know, that it's not part of that. It's a part of the music. He's a musician. He's an artist first. So,
and it's kind of telling that people are like, why didn't you get him something more expensive when he literally got him like one of the most reliable cars you can also have? Like, what does that say about us as a society that people act like that? And it's like, reliability is so much more important, especially in this day and age. Like but that's neither here nor there. That's a whole other argument we could have.
Okay.
So I guess that leaves me and my number one album of the decade. And I think that we all know my number one album of the decade is Hamilton, because this for me is an album that I fell in love with prior to seeing the show. This was an album that I felt just like it encapsulates everything we've talked about tonight. It encapsulates storytelling. It encapsulates capturing an audience that doesn't normally listen to things, bringing them in. Like, it tells such a fluid, functioning story. It made hip hop relevant for people who would never listen to it. It really like pushed boundaries in ways that Broadway really wasn't seeing. It put an entire an entire version of history through the point of view of people of color and flipped it and told this story in such a way that it was so beautiful and just really captured my imagination and captured an entire world's imagination. Like, there is something to be said about the fact that Broadway shows do not hit in the same way that they used to, and yet this show has transcended the normal Broadway scene. It has transcended the music scene. It has transcended, like, it matters. It's huge. People are still talking about it. It's still, well, not right now currently, but it sells out almost every show it always has in New York. Everywhere it tours, it sells out. Like, Hamilton is the love child of someone who passionately loves hip hop, storytelling, and Broadway. And for me, that is arguably what makes it the most special album of the decade, but also one of just the most special anythings that's ever existed in like a creative format. And I love it for that.
So, it's so funny because, you know, I have had endless conversations about this, but like it is so hard to argue that like this isn't one of the most important pieces of art that has ever been creative. It flipped the script and it made you actually think about our founding fathers in a way that you probably should think about them, because it really paints a lot of them in a really poor light. Like, right. It takes shots that founding fathers that you have to, but also paints them in light where you can at least relate to them, because some of us are shitty people and that's okay. But it does that as well. And what I think what I like and appreciate it most about it is the fact that it also pays really big tribute to hip hop in ways that people don't expect. So during the cabinet battles, you have Cabinet Battle 1 and Cabinet Battle 2. At the end, it goes, if you know, now you know. Which, if you know anything, that's a direct reference to Notorious B.I.G. And just even small little winks and references like that are huge and monumental, because if you're in Lindsay, you're making a hip hop record, and if you don't do it right, you should get destroyed for good reason.
Right.
But he did it right. He did it with respect, and he did it the way you should. And even that even goes past all the storytelling, which, man, like, you are so encapsulated and invigorated with Burr and Hamilton and how they are just so juxtaposed upon themselves. And it's just so seamless, man. And it's really hard for me to have a conversation with someone, and this is going to sound really hard-headed, but like with someone that doesn't get Hamilton and doesn't think that it's a monumental piece of art, because it really is. And it transformed Broadway forever. It, like, right after this, Dear Evan Hansen came out, which you could argue is just another accessible piece of Broadway music. and it transformed Broadway for the better. It transformed what I would say music for the better, and it also just transformed art.
Well,
where, you can do this thing. Go ahead and fucking do it.
And it put Lin in a position where, like, in the Heights, people knew who he was, but then Hamilton happened. And now look at Lin. Like, look at the stuff he's doing. Again, I'd point to Freestyle Love Supreme, which he produced and put a bunch of people that he cared about in the hip-hop world on a stage every night to do freestyle for 90 minutes with an audience. Like, and it ran for a year. Like, that is the kind of stuff that he's been put in a position where he's using his power to shed more light on hip hop and artists. Right. And he, again, like looking at UTK and the stuff he's been doing with him, or you look at the stuff he's doing with Disney and Moana and Little Mermaid, like Lin is everywhere in the right ways. And I think that it's really great to see someone like him who is so passionate for hip hop and that music. And seeing him come up like that is huge to me. And again, it transformed Broadway in such an interesting way because it really became the new gateway show for Broadway, if you will, in the same way that something like Phantom of the Opera did 30 years ago. Or, you know, that every once in a while we have those watershed moments. And I've said that word a lot tonight, but it's true. Like, there are watershed moments in time when it comes to movies and music and Broadway, in art in general. And this was one of those watershed moments where suddenly Broadway broke through again in a way that it hadn't in so long. And I love it for that. And one of the things that RB3 had said earlier, which, what to his credit, and I understand, is that he hadn't listened to it yet because he wants to see it play out. But the beautiful thing about Hamilton in the way that Lin wrote it is that you couldn't do the album unless you have every piece of the show on the album. And there is only one 10-second part, I think, of the show for the most part that is not on the album, which means if you're listening to it, you are literally listening to the show from beginning to end. And that is something you never ever see in these Broadway productions. And that is a credit to him as a storyteller, that he made sure that the entire story literally flows from beginning to end. And it is a dual album, like 2 discs if you're buying it. I think it's 4 vinyls if you buy it. Like, he made sure that the entire show could be packaged and put in one place for one person at any time to tune in and listen to it. And it's a 3-hour journey that is so worth the ride.
Yeah, it clocks in at 2 hours, 22 minutes, actually. That's a little shorter than I thought it was.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel that long. It really doesn't. You're sitting there for maybe what you think is an hour and a half, but you've gone through this journey of, you know, Alexander Hamilton and what he did and what he didn't do, and why we forget about him and why we shouldn't. But yeah, I get it. Like, it's so good. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, I 100% want to visit this album and really give it. I mean, I appreciate everything that this has spawned. Like you said, the rise of Lin, the rise of Lin
Miranda,
Miranda. All of his successes, like you said, and his Disney stuff. I like seeing people like Daveed Diggs, who's also becoming like his own star in his own right. A lot of people from Hamilton are becoming stars, and I really appreciate it. I love the fact that it merges and exposes hip hop to a whole different kind of audience. It has such originality and creativity, at least just from what I've seen on TV, like when they do live performances of it, like at the Grammys and other reward shows like the Tonys. I really love and appreciate what they do on that front. I am ecstatic to see it, or maybe I will just listen to it as an album before I consume the visual product. But it's a true talent that they were able to encapsulate this show completely auditory, like through the music, without the need of like needing to watch it to tell the full story. I mean, that's a major accomplishment in and of itself.
It really is. And I think that that's what makes it so special, again, because it's such a rare thing. Like, I had Beetlejuice on here earlier, but I mean, Beetlejuice does not function in the same way that literally the entire album is the show. Like, you know, you're missing parts of the dramatic storytelling because you don't have it as an album. But with Hamilton, you do. Like, it's literally all there. And it's just, that is so fucking cool to me, man. Like, that's not something you see.
And also, like, if you were to point out like some just straight bangers from the soundtrack, if you haven't listened to it, the opening song, Alexander Hamilton, literally tells the whole story of the record straight for you. My Shot, I think, is probably one of the most accessible but best songs out there. You'll Be Back is insane. Right Hand Man, great song. Helpless and Satisfied back to back is a perfect juxtaposition of how two people see a situation. Love it to death. Wait for It, which you may have heard. Battle of Yorktown, Guns and Ships, like just nonstop great music.
History Has Its Eyes on You, Yorktown, Dear Theodosia. You know, there's so much of it. Blow Us All Away, Stay Alive, It's Quiet Uptown.
Say no to this.
Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story. Like all of it is so fucking good, you guys. Like, I just love this album so much. I love the show so much. And as you can tell, I'm like very passionate about it because I want people to discover it. Not because people haven't, because everyone knows what Hamilton is, but it's like, if you haven't just sat down to listen to it, maybe you should. Like, not just if you're just like, I don't know if I'm not a Broadway person. I would argue that you don't have to be a Broadway person to enjoy this. Right. That's my thoughts.
And that gives me more motivation because I've actually never personally been to Broadway or seen a Broadway show. I've seen things in LA like at the Pantages, but I want to go out and experience that. And I was a theater kid in high school, so something like Hamilton is one of those ones that I think is definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And you know what? I think maybe while the quarantine's going on, maybe the three of us should just get together and like have a listen party with RB3. Like, I just think it'd be so dope to just sit down and listen to it. And like, why not, man?
Yeah, why not? We'll see.
I would love that. That'd be dope. I would love to experience that with you guys.
Yeah, yes, I think we'll look into that. I'm sorry that we just said that on air where no one else is going to be able to hang out with us. But, you know, it's one of those things that I think could be a lot of fun. And I want to share that with you because it's like anything else. You love sharing a good movie with someone because you love the movie and you hope that they'll see what you see in it. It's the same thing I feel with Hamilton. Like, I want to share it with you because I think there's just something special about sharing that with someone.
Yeah, for
absolutely.
Sure. So,
right, man.
PJ, do you think that closes out the show, doesn't it?
I think that just about does, except we have a couple of things that I want to talk about real quick. But number one, I also am going to say, I put it in the chat already. I'm going to make a Spotify playlist. Dorian had actually floated the idea. He wanted us to put all of our top albums of the decade on Spotify where people could find it. So if you guys can send me your lists privately after this, I'll go ahead and make a Spotify playlist. I'll tag you guys in it. And you guys can go and listen to all of our top albums of the decade, which I'm very, very excited to do. And with that, before I make the big announcement, RB3, let's go ahead and just shine a light on you. Where can the kids find you online? And, you know, what do you have going on right now?
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, at Director RB3. And you can find me on First Cut, our YouTube channel that I do with Andres and Sabrina. And we do a lot of fun stuff on there, movie reviews, the meaning of podcast, just everything. And everything is and we're going to be trying to develop more things and do more fun things, more live streams and everything in between. So check out our YouTube channel, First Cut. We're trying to grow. We're trying to, and hopefully you'll be there for us as we grow.
Hey, man, I have loved everything you've done for so long. So you know that I will always be riding shotgun with you guys. Like, from here to the end of the earth, I'm always going to be there for RB3 and everybody over at First Cut.
I appreciate it. Appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. So real quick, before we go ahead and sign all of this off, I have an announcement to make. This is what I was teasing earlier. We have our final April watch along finally confirmed, and we've got our guest confirmed, which I was not anticipating to like get it all finished today, and it worked out. And I'm so excited because this is someone I think RB3 is going to appreciate as well, being here. And this is something that it's almost like the longest in joke of all time that I can't believe it's happening. But if you've watched the PJ Campbell show long enough, you know that our ongoing joke for the longest time with Pat Hogue is that he had never seen Young Guns 2. It is something that Frank and I have brought up on every single episode of the show. Anytime I've been on anything with either of them, we've always pointed at the fact that Hogue has never seen Young Guns 2. I mean, it came up on the Tremors watch along just the other day. So that pretty much gives away the fact that I'm really excited because we are going to be doing Young Guns 2 with none other than Mark Baby Carrots Ellis. We are going to be doing the Young Guns 2 watch along officially the very last April Friday, which is April 24th, I believe, 7 p.m. here. We are going to have Mark Baby Carrots Ellis on the show with us to talk one of our favorite films of all time in Young Guns. This has been so long coming because the very first time I actually came to Collider when we were still shooting the Throwdown at Collider, one of the first things I noticed when I walked into the office was that Christian and Mark had a Young Guns 2 poster up. And Young Guns 2 has been one of my favorite films ever since I was very young. I actually now live down the street from where it was shot. And and I have talked about like him coming down here to hang out and go see it. And so I am super excited that we are going to have Mark Ellis on the PJ Campbell Network to talk Young Guns.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting. It's no secret, I'm a big Mark Ellis guy. So it's gonna be a lot of fun to have him on stream talking about this movie I've never seen. I'm kind of nervous about that, to be honest. I think I might watch it beforehand. Maybe we'll make a poll. We'll see. But I'm super hyped for it just because, like, you know, it's not every day you get a guy like Mark Ellis to come onto your live stream. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I said earlier in the show, the thing I'm most excited about is that these watch-alongs have been really cool because we've been like showing people stuff that they wouldn't necessarily watch, and this is one that I know people definitely are probably not seeing. So I'm really excited to sit down with it. And like I said, RB3, I really want to have you on. I want you to choose a film, and we'll talk about it off mic. But I would love to have you back to do a watch-along while the quarantine's still going on, because the audience has really embraced us trying to show them stuff that they wouldn't normally see. And I'd love for you to introduce the audience to the movie.
I would love that. I mean, I love movies, and I'm more than happy to join you guys for a watch-along at any point. So I'm down.
Awesome. I love that so much. And again, dude, thank you so much for coming on tonight to talk your favorite albums. Like, it was so great. I'm really glad you were here.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me, PJ. You know, honestly, it's always great to see you, great to talk to you, great obviously to talk to Evan as well. We've had a lot of these discussions and Facebook groups before, so it's good that we got to talk about this stuff on mic. And yeah, I'm super happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was a long time coming. Evan, where can the kids find you online?
All right, y'all. I don't know if PJ's doing this now, so I'm just gonna do it. You guys can find me on Twitter at Evan DeGraff Live. I have my favorite Pixar movies up there right now, and on top of that, I am doing a revitalize this. I'm rewatching all the Pixar movies. All I'm gonna say is I slept on WALL-E. I cried twice watching that movie. Forgot like the mastermind that is, but also we will be doing a famous last words, our second premiere episode of that movie, of my new show, with the Aussie Jacob Blunden. Super excited for that. And I guess since I can do this now, we're also doing a Goofy watch along come Monday. I think PJ's excited for that. I know I am excited. And then just to shout Chris Clark, because he's the guy who helped pop up this new graphic for us, this bad boy. He has Suddenly Soundtracks coming up. Which is going to be, if it's going to pop up, there we go. This Wednesday, I think, he's doing the top 10 Disney soundtracks of all time. To follow it, he's going to follow that up with the schedule that we have right now, right here. Whitney Seibold and William Bibiani are going to be on Suddenly Soundtracks come April 21st. It's a premiere of his series that did really well, and it had really successful numbers. I'm really excited that it's back. And last but not least, we have Big Trouble in Little China. I'm going to let you take it from here, PJ.
So this Friday, we are going to be doing Big Trouble in Little China with John Kaiser, the drunken sailor known as John Kaiser, and Tim Franco. We're very excited about this one. Again, this was someone who reached out and said, I want to show the world my favorite film that I think they may not have seen. And anyone who knows Kaiser knows that he is basically the embodiment of everything that is Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China. And I am so looking forward to having him on to sit down and talk about his favorite film as we watch it together. It is going to be a ton of fun. Again, Tim Franco will also be there. Evan, I think this is a first time watch for you as well.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So we have a lot going on the channel for the upcoming week, but you guys, again, thank you so much for the support. I know we're still like fledgling and figuring everything out, but you guys have been here every step of the way, and it means the world to us. We have seen the biggest, every day when we come on, the people show up, you guys watch, you like the videos, you're sharing the videos, and I can't thank you enough, because I've been in the space for a long time, but I never really was doing the YouTube content like this. I was always just doing podcasts, and the fact that we are already over 100 subscribers on YouTube is pretty monumental to me. And that just goes to show that you guys care about the stuff we're doing, and I'm hoping that we're bringing you some sort of happiness during the quarantine. I know how crazy all this stuff is. I know how hard it's been for people, and I just want to spread a little bit of love. So every night, we're at 7 o'clock here on the channel, 7 p.m. PST, 10 p.m. EST. We're trying to bring you content. We are we wish we were ready for primetime players. Like, that's a playoff of the SNLs. not ready for primetime players. We want to be ready, so we're doing everything at primetime, and we're hoping that you guys will continue to be along for the ride. If you're in the chat, if you're still here and you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at PJ_Campbell. It's right here also. And with that, I think we're good to go. So thank you guys again for all the love and support, and we will see you here next Sunday on the PJ Campbell Network for another episode of the PJ Campbell Show. Have a great day, everyone.